Welcome back to the final part of our series on malaria and typhoid misdiagnosis. In part 2, we dove deep into the limitations of the Widal test, explored shocking findings from the lab, and raised critical questions about its reliability. Now, in this final installment, we are getting into the hard data, a groundbreaking study that reveals just how flawed the Widal test is. We'll also uncover the surprising role malaria plays in false positives and discuss better diagnostics options, including the gold standard test for typhoid fever. Let's get started. Medicine is an ever-evolving field where new knowledge is constantly being uncovered. As doctors, we rely on research and studies to challenge what we think we know, improve our understanding, and ultimately provide better care for our patients. I remember my days as a medical student more than 12 years ago. Back then, we primarily learned about few drugs for treating diabetes. Today, the options have expanded significantly with newer and more effective medications available. Some of those drugs I learned about back then, I don't even use them anymore. Why? Because research has shown us better ways to treat this condition. This continuous cycle of questioning, studying, and refining our practices is what keeps medicine moving forward. And that brings us to the Widal test. One such study that sheds light on the Widal test was conducted by Osanhon Enabulele and Simeon Inyemike Awuno. Published in the Nigerian Medical Journal on May 1st, 2016, their research provides critical insights into the reliability or lack thereof of the Widal test as a diagnostic tool for typhoid fever. In their study, they found that the Widal test has the following characteristics: a sensitivity of 35%, a specificity of 51%, a positive predictive value of 17%, and a negative predictive value of 73%. Now, I'm sure most of you might be wondering what these numbers means because they obviously sound technical to most of us. But I'm going to break it down for you. Imagine there are 100 people who actually have typhoid. The Widal test is supposed to point all of them out, right? But guess what? It only identifies 35 of them. That means 65 people with typhoid walk away thinking they are fine when they are not. A good test should catch at least 80 to 90 out of that 100. So this is like a student scoring just 35% on an exam. That's a huge failure. Now, let's flip it. What about people who don't have typhoid? The Widal test is supposed to give them a clean bill of health. But with a specificity of 51%, it gets it wrong almost half the time. Imagine being perfectly healthy and suddenly being told you have typhoid. How frustrating and unnecessary is that? For a test to be reliable, we need this number to be way above 80%. Here is where it gets even more shocking. Out of 100 people who test positive for typhoid using the Widal test, only 17 actually have it. Just 17. The remaining 83 people are being misdiagnosed, treated with antibiotics they don't need, and wasting time and resources. For a test to be trustworthy, we want this number to be at least 70%. But 17%? This is almost unbelievable. Now, let's look at the flip side. What if the test says you don't have typhoid? Here, the Widal test is slightly better. It is right about 73% of the time. But that still means that 27 out of 100 people who don't have typhoid will be missed. For a test to be truly dependable, this number needs to be above 90%. When you look at these numbers, it's clear the Widal test isn't just unreliable. It is dangerous. It leaves too many people untreated who actually have typhoid, while flooding others with unnecessary medications for a disease that they don't have. We deserve better than this. But that's not all that was found in the research. And here's where things get even more interesting and a bit alarming. The same study showed that malaria parasitemia, which is the presence of malaria parasites in the blood, can produce false positive Widal test results. Now, let me break this down for you. Imagine malaria parasites showing up to a costume party dressed as Salmonella typhi. They've got just the right disguise, antigenic markers that looks just like that of the typhoid bacteria. The Widal test, unfortunately, is like the party bouncer who doesn't look too closely at identifications or IDs. It just sees the costume and says, "Yep, you are typhoid, come in." This isn't just a little mix-up, it's a serious problem. People are being treated for typhoid when the real issue is actually malaria, and only malaria. When you add malaria's ability to mimic typhoid in test results, it is no wonder we see so many cases of misdiagnosis. This isn't just a faulty alarm system. It is one that keeps crying wolf, leading to unnecessary treatments for typhoid, while the real culprit, malaria, is left unchecked. I have personally seen cases where patients had resistant malaria, meaning the first-line anti-malaria medications didn't work. Instead of re-evaluating the diagnosis and treating the resistant malaria with some higher medications, they were loaded with antibiotics because the Widal test kept coming back positive. Each test result seemed to shout, "Typhoid." But the real problem, resistant malaria, was hiding in plain sight. Imagine the frustration of being sick, taking multiple antibiotics you didn't need, while the real illness silently worsens. The cost of this kind of misdiagnosis isn't just wasted time and resources, it is lives. And let's not forget the toll on the patient's body, the unnecessary medications, the prolonged suffering, and the delay in receiving the care that they truly need. I'm sure many of you will now be asking, what is the test to check whether someone truly has typhoid? According to the World Health Organization, the most reliable test is a blood culture. This test identifies the actual bacteria, Salmonella typhi, in the patient's bloodstream. It's actually like having a detective find the criminal at the crime scene. Another option is stool culture. This test is particularly useful for identifying carriers of typhoid. That's people who don't have symptoms but can still spread the disease. Stool cultures are less invasive than blood cultures and can provide valuable information in community health efforts. And then there's the Widal test, which we have discussed extensively. Is it entirely useless? Not necessarily. In places where no other diagnostic tools are available, the Widal test can serve as a rough screening tool, especially when paired with thorough clinical evaluation. But here's the catch. A single Widal test result should never be used to make a final diagnosis. For the test to have any real meaning, you need to do it more than once for the same patient and compare the results over time. This process, which we call serial testing, looks at how the antibody levels rise or fall. Only then can the results provide some clues about whether the person might actually have typhoid. Malaria and typhoid are completely different diseases, yet they are often misdiagnosed and dangerously intertwined. This isn't just about wasted resources, it's about lives lost and patients suffering unnecessarily. So how can we fix this? It starts with awareness, sharing knowledge, improving diagnostic practices, and demanding accuracy in healthcare. If this video has opened your eyes to the dangers of misdiagnosis, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with your family, friends, and anyone you care about. Together, we can break the myths and demand better health care for everyone. And if you're passionate about learning more, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our next videos. Your health and the health of those you love is worth it. Thank you for watching. And remember, stay informed, stay curious, and always advocate for your health.